Hey, everybody. This is Mike Lieberman with Scope and with Clinico. And once again, I am doing a fun interview with somebody working in the world of clinical research, our exciting world. It's an exciting time. So today I have Andrew MacKinnon. He's the executive GM at Medable. And he volunteered to do this because we've had interesting conversations. And what I always do is after the conversations, I always say, hey, do you want to stay on for 10 minutes or do you want to meet next week? So everybody say hello to Andrew. And right now, everybody in the world is saying, hi, Andrew, at their desks. Okay. So Medable's an interesting company. Everybody knows Medable, but really quick, let's not assume anything. Tell people what Medable is because it's really relevant to the question I'm going to ask you.
Yep. So Medable is it's a digital clinical trial platform, an evidence generation platform. At the heart of it, the core is kind of ePro, but a lot of things that sit around that. So everything from onboarding the patients through e-consent, training patients, training sites, collecting data, whether that is eCOAs, diaries, pros, etc., from whatever kind of direct data capture source we're looking at, but also adding in additional elements. So collecting data from wearables, from sensors, integrating into other systems, automating workflows, reducing patient and site burden. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's what we do.
And that's the world we live in, and it's exciting. Can you imagine saying that 15 years ago? It's really cool. It's really cool,
Yep.
right? It is.
Yep.
It's all becoming real. We still have a ways to go. Okay. So I'm glad you said that and you described that because you guys at your core, you live in clinical, but you're a technology company. And what we were talking about was big picture. You had said, I think you and Michelle were talking and you said, what are the areas to kind of address where in clinical research, not just as Medable, but as an industry, what do we could, and you used a term, which is very much a technology company phraseology, which is where is the white space in clinical development, right?
Yep.
And that's interesting. I don't think that language is something that you would hear from a typical ClinOps person who's executing a trial, but you're at Medable and you have responsibilities to see what are we doing now and where are we going next, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
tell me some of your thoughts of what are some of what came out of that conversation of like what is that definition? What is white space in clinical development?
So it's one of these things, as you said, for our conversation, I've been thinking about it for a while, and I know Michelle and I have a number of conversations on. Effectively, white space it's the concept of, if you look at a clinical development program for an asset, from the point at which it's discovered and it enters into human trials to the point at which it hits the pharmacies and prescribed to patients, within that period of time, you've got chunks of time where you're running really fast, delivering clinical trials, conducting the phase 1 trial, conducting the phase 2, the phase 3, and others. And then in between each of those points in time, you've got a point where a study ends and then a point where the next study begins. That gap in the middle, that's the white space. And interestingly, once I was starting to think about it, a number of different things started popping up, and there was a report that was produced by IQVIA. It's their report on kind of 2024, and the numbers, the amount of time spent in white space. I always knew that it was a bit of an issue. It's one of the areas that we really need to look to attack if we're going to get drugs to market quicker. The amount of time spent in white space is pretty staggering. For an average of about a 12-year development time, about 4 to 5 years of that can be spent in white space, not doing anything. Of course, a lot of stuff is done at that point, but it's a point, that's a really significant chunk. 45% of the time spent in developing an asset is time when no clinical research is being done and other things are happening. And those other things are potentially things that we can look at addressing in the way in which we conduct the clinical trials. Can the way in which we do that activity shorten that white space down? What are the things that we can look at from a technology perspective that can kind of shorten that time frame down and get our drugs to market quicker?
So is the definition of white space in this case, I mean, is it saying dead time too strong of a time, too strong of a term, or are you saying white space is clinical research is not happening? We're waiting for a database to be locked. We're waiting for X. We're waiting for Y. Or is it more white space means research isn't happening, but there's a lot of processes, busy work happening?
Absolutely. I wouldn't say dead space. I think that, yeah, you're right. That probably is too strong a term. It's the point that, it's when you're gathering all your data together, you're trying to, pull everything into one space, conduct the analysis, understand what that clinical trial showed you. What is it that it showed me that impacts how I do my phase two, my phase three, rewriting my protocol, conducting regulatory conversations. A lot of those things are essential. There has to be an element of white space within that time. If you're conducting your end of phase two meeting with the FDA, that has to take place. You can't
Okay.
eliminate that. But a lot of the things around, a lot of that time is spent trying to analyze the data, get it into one space, analyze it, understand it, see what it's telling me. I think there's a lot of the ways in which we conduct our trials, set them up, and then gather the data together at the end that absolutely could be shortened within that period of time. And we saw it a lot. Interestingly, over the last few years, the only indication where white space has reduced, every single other indication, the white space has increased. The only indication that it decreased in was vaccine research for very
Okay.
obvious reasons.
For obvious reasons,
We
which
had
means
COVID.
it is doable.
It's
It is
doable. I
possible.
mean, in the vaccine space, that COVID-19 piece, I mean, anybody involved in that research, it damn near killed us all.
Yep.
People were sleeping in offices. But there was a
Yep.
lot of stuff that was run in parallel, and potentially with the use of technology, you start to bring in things like AI. You can start automating some of those activities. You can have some of those things done. You can start looking at data earlier, understanding what it's telling me. I can start prepping my phase two work and looking at my phase three work whilst my phase two is ongoing, adaptive trial designs, all these kind of things can help
Yes.
shorten that space down. And there's a massive role for technology to play within that.
Okay, so the white space in this case is sometimes inefficiency,
Mhm.
improved
Absolutely.
processes, and also white space in the term of from investor language of an opportunity, right? So white
Mhm.
space if I'm an investor and I'm looking where's there a need.
Yeah.
That
Yep.
that language also applies in the sense of this is an opportunity. There's a need. This is where we can squeeze. If we get from,
Yep.
X number of days wasted to fewer, it adds up. It all helps, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yep.
from a technology company, you guys are looking at this as how can we better help our clients use existing
Yeah.
technology,
Yep.
connecting the dots, or maybe you may be developing new technology too. But I don't think we have a shortage of technologies. We have a lot of data. It's a lot of this
Yes.
stuff is
And
connecting the
I
dots, right?
I think that excess of data, or maybe not excess, that massive data, I think is one of the issues that we're starting to see bleed into this white space. Now that I've got all of this data in front of me, what's it telling me? How do I how
Right.
do I understand it? How do I even get it into one single place that I can run my analysis from so I understand what is the story this data is telling me? How do I listen to this data if it's in 50 different places? That's one of the things that Medable is looking at. I mentioned, kind of the integrations, collecting the data in a single platform. That's one of the ways that we can start to address some of this problem by helping some of that real-time access, some of that quicker access. We had a brilliant case study recently, really challenging area, very competitive area to work in, diabetes within
Mhm.
weight management. And we were able to go from database lock to top line results and press release within 2 weeks.
Wow.
That kind of, and we did that by preparing the study and planning the study and standardizing what was going to be conducted within it so that when we get to the end, results really, really quickly. And I think that's some of the things that we can start to look at. It's not going to be something that we can eliminate from a trial, but we can chip away at it. And if you think about, in a 12-year period of time, 5 years spent sat waiting for things to
Right.
happen, that's a huge amount of time. Even if we were to able to shorten clinical trials by half, you're still stuck with this huge great
Right.
gap in between.
Right.
So, getting trials launched quicker, fantastic, really important, but it's not the level of magnitude that we could have if we started impacting on
Okay.
that white space.
That's inspiring. And also, it does speak to my audience. A scope. This is what we're talking about. We have all these people in different functions, very capable, good project managers, good business leaders. They also know how to use technology. A lot of them actually are
Yeah.
data scientists. They're using data more effectively, and everybody's working more. But overall, this is still a matter of,
Mm.
wow, how do we squeeze more? And I
Yeah.
think your example, I remember a keynote a couple of years back, it was after COVID. I think it was Rob Goodwin was talking about at
Mhm.
Pfizer. I might be quoting it wrong, like saying, hey, when we looked back, yeah, we did it, all of us in industry. We COVID, what you just said, we did it. COVID was
Yeah.
amazing. but it wasn't rocket science. It was everybody
Yeah.
working like maniacs in an
Yeah.
unsustainable manner. It's
Yeah.
not sustainable
Yeah.
as an industry, as a company. So we
Yeah.
do have to get into, as you defined it, the white space where there is opportunity to increase efficiency,
Yeah.
better connect data, be smarter, be more efficient. All right.
And
I'm
I
with you,
said
man.
this at
I'm with you.
Scope earlier this year. I was on a panel. I was talking about this kind of tax of, any process that is human driven is by definition not scalable. It
Right.
can't be. You
Right.
couldn't repeat the COVID-19 over and over again. Scalability has to come through technology.
Yeah.
It's the only way
Agreed.
that can do that. Humans burn out, computers don't. That's
Yep.
it's
Exactly.
that simple.
Exactly. All right, cool. Andrew, thanks for talking and kind of
Thank
sharing
you.
what's going on. It's inspiring and yeah, it's exciting times, right?
Indeed,
So
indeed.
cool. Thank you,
Thanks very
Andrew.
much.
All right, everybody. Andrew MacKinnon from Medable. Good job, man.
Take care.